We're pleased to welcome Zhaohan Shen, who's a military security analyst. Thanks for being with us here.
Thank you for having me.
On France 24. Yeah, the current president and the former president, both on tours abroad. And gosh, you really have the optics of opposite ends. First off, this statements out of Beijing, the foreign ministry, saying that it would be a provocation if she meets with the new Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Yeah, firstly, this is a stark contrast. We have the former president of Taiwan, Ma Ying-jeou, in mainland China, and then we have the current incumbent president, Tsai Ing-wen, on American soil. So it's a huge contrast. I think this really highlights just how different these two different parties, these two different leaders view the current policy of China's exercises, China's foreign policy towards the island. So it's a significant development, I think, and I believe that just this Monday we had the Financial Times confirm that actually President Tsai Ing-wen was trying to dissuade House Speaker Kevin McCarthy from visiting Taiwan itself due to concerns that China may escalate these military exercises as it did when Nancy Pelosi had visited Taiwan last year.
When Nancy Pelosi visited, did that help or hurt the cause of Taiwan?
I think this could be viewed in terms of the public opinions in Taiwan. I think a majority of Taiwanese people, according to the latest polls, did support Nancy Pelosi's visit. It's especially against the backdrop of the Ukrainian invasion. There were a lot of concerns, though, that Nancy Pelosi just might aggravate China to pursue more military exercises around the island.
And there actually was a spike in tension that followed. But that spike in tension, how far does it go? When is China at this point, how intent is it? How much of it is just saber rattling?
I think it's interesting to see. I think if we've monitored kind of the developments over the years, and we've seen, for instance, that on a daily basis, Chinese military vessels are constantly, and this is on a daily basis, they're constantly intruding into Taiwanese airspace, into Taiwanese waters. But I think we have to also realize that this was not the first time that Taiwanese leaders had transited in the United States. 3 years ago, Tsai Ing-wen had actually visited several Caribbean countries where she had visited and transited in California as well.
The former president going to mainland China, and he's from a party that has a history, the Kuomintang.
Exactly. So the KMT, the Kuomintang, which is a nationalist party, was founded in 1912. So it remained as the kind of one state party in China until 1949, when the Chinese Civil War broke out and the KMT lost and fled to Taiwan. So it was a party that very much had very close policies and believed in cross-strait rapprochement, stronger economic and cultural ties with China, which is significantly different from the KMT, which believes in a policy of self-determination.
And today, what's its path? What is this? What kind of a message does this send? He's obviously, if he's going there, it's because he thinks it's a vote getter.
Yeah. So it's interesting because in 10 months, Taiwan will go to the polls to elect its next president in Taiwan. And so I think this visit is very much political in nature, and against the backdrop of these kind of intrusions, and then Tsai Ing-wen's visit in the United States. It's a significant message to Taiwanese people for Taiwanese people that if they want stability, if they want peace, if they want these economic restrictions to be lifted, they have to vote for the KMT. And this is the message I think that he is sending to the Taiwanese population.
We have news that perhaps has nothing to do with Taiwan, or perhaps it does, with Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, suddenly reappearing on home soil. It's been seen in the press as the Chinese authorities sending a message to investors that they don't want to scare them away, that China's open for business. And we know when it comes to tech, how strategic Taiwan is. Jack Ma's reappearance, is there a Taiwan angle to it?
I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that Jack Ma's reappearance is related to Taiwan's sort of these kinds of movements lately. But I think it's hard to separate the economic part of it with kind of what's happening. So obviously, Jack Ma, his company Alibaba had tried to apply for IPO. This was not was approved by the Chinese central government, and then now it's breaking up into different small little companies. I mean, I think this sends a message because Chinese people are concerned of China clamping down on capital flight as well, which is happening at record rates according to recent studies as well. Chinese investors and even foreign investors are afraid that if the US and China continues this as a kind of trend of escalatory tensions, we may see the same sanctions that were applied on Russia to China. So are their investments safe? It's hard to tell.
Is Taiwan's best defense its military, its allies, or the fact that it has these semiconductor factories that the world needs?
I think that semiconductors part is quite important. I mean, again, Taiwan supplies more than almost 90% of the advanced semiconductors in the world. I mean, talk about, your phones, your computers, your televisions. I think without semiconductors from Taiwan, it's very hard for manufacturers and for companies to operate. And so this is a definite, especially for China, where it produces many of these goods. It's definitely a concern, and I think the Taiwanese military and the Taiwanese government is very much aware that this is used as sort of a barrier protector in the face of a Chinese invasion.
And when those semiconductors can be made elsewhere, what happens then?
I think this is, it's very hard to tell, but if let's say semiconductors could be replicated in mainland China or in other developing countries and regions like India or Southeast Asia, I think Taiwan, for instance, still has its allies. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had the Japanese reiterate support for Taiwanese path of self-determination, for instance. And we also had the Americans come in at such strong. I think it would be very, very difficult for these allies to retreat, because that also sends a message to other allies of the US that's not a reliable partner.
There's the jibe that's been made that what happens in Taiwan, Beijing is first waiting to see how Vladimir Putin does in Ukraine. Do you agree with that, though?
Yeah, I think to some level, President Xi Jinping and the Chinese central government is watching the Ukrainian issue quite closely. It's looking at how Russia, for instance, is handling a smaller neighbor, just like China and the island of Taiwan. I think that there are many similarities that are between both cases, but I think we have to be careful that to say that Taiwan, for instance, is designated as a major non-NATO ally by the US as well, compared to Ukraine. So this is a huge provocation, if anything, if there's an invasion or any escalatory tensions that cross that red line.
Zhaohan Shen, many thanks for being with us here on France 24.
Thank you for having me.